The amount of evidence is staggering. Let's just hit some of the key points. Now let's get into it.
Station that one explosion caused, because here's now what we are starting to learn about the succession, or what someone obviously hoped would be a succession of explosions. The first bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and diffused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first. So try to imagine two or threefold happening what we've already seen there. It is just incredible to think that there was that much heavy artillery that was somehow moved into the downtown Oklahoma City Federal Building.
2 other explosive devices were found that were not detonated, and they were larger than the first.
I think he said another bomb.
Another bomb, move back. Oh my God, another bomb.
We just saw, if you were watching there was a white pickup truck backing a trailer into the scene here. They're trying to move people out of the way so they can get it in. Appears to be the Oklahoma County Bomb Squad. It's their bomb disposal unit, essentially, is what it is, and it is what they would use to, if the report that we gave you just a few moments ago turns out to be correct, that they have found a second explosive device of some kind inside this building. They'll back that trailer down there, and the bomb squad folks will go in, and they will use that that trailer. You see the bucket on the back there, sort of, this is how they would transport the explosive device away from this populated area to try to do something with it.
The Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found in the A.P. Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Mike, you're still with us, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and I might tell you in addition to that, in fact, what we were told at the scene a few minutes ago was that, in fact, 2 different explosive devices were found in addition to the one that went off.
So a total of 3,
A total of 3.
Now confirmed through federal authorities that a second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City. It was an explosion at 9 o'clock this morning that did that damage you're looking at right there, blowing off the entire north face of that building. Again, you're looking at the north face there. A second bomb was found on the east side of that building. A bomb squad is on the scene. That second bomb has not exploded. We don't know quite the status yet, if they've managed to defuse it, but it has been confirmed that a second bomb was found on the east side.
The report I have is that one device was deactivated. Apparently there's another device, and obviously whatever did the damage to the Murrah building was a tremendous, very sophisticated explosive device.
So President Clinton just called Frank Keating, Governor Frank Keating, and he says that 3 FBI anti-terrorist teams are en route to Oklahoma City. Right now they are saying that this is the work of a sophisticated group. This is a very sophisticated device, and it has to have been done by an explosives expert. Obviously with this type of explosion.
The medical teams downtown are unable to get into the wreckage to retrieve more of the injured because of the presence of other bombs in the area.
Well, I just took a look down the street at the Murrah building again. I see another bomb truck going, so apparently they're going to try to get out that third bomb that's been talked about. Still a lot of activity around the Murrah building. Security concerns that another one still might go off.
Fortunately, it didn't, because the second device that they found, we understand, was even more powerful than the first. They then found a third device, and you can see the look on this woman's face at the fear that she might have to go through the same thing again. They then found a third device, which was also larger than the first. Hard to feel lucky at this point, but certainly through some good work by some munitions experts and the explosive sniffing dogs, further tragedy has almost certainly been averted here.
But it was a great stroke of luck that we actually have got diffused bombs. It's through the bomb material that we will be able to track down who committed this atrocity.
It would have been an incredible help to have been able to get a hold of those unexploded bombs. Unfortunately, the BATF, according to police and firefighter testimony, were inside removing them and spiriting them away because they had to keep their story straight that there was only one bomb, a truck bomb. Out of hundreds of people we interviewed, we couldn't find a single person who said they'd heard only one explosion.
But, you know,
Did you live here, Charles, at the time of the bomb?
I live here. I work right here in this building. I was at work. I was at work.
Did you feel it?
Yeah, I thought this building was blowing up.
How many blasts did you feel?
2.
And how far apart were they?
Oh, probably about boom, and then it's boom.
It's a historical fact, part of the public record, that there were multiple devices inside the Oklahoma City building. and that there were at least 2 explosions. The emergency radio transmission transcripts show clearly that the police and firefighters were on the record witnessing the BATF removing unexploded devices. But you see, we have the actual scientific fact. We have the University of Oklahoma's own seismograph reports, as well as the U.S. Geological Survey reports. 2 different scientific institutions showing multiple explosions. But you see, McVeigh would have had to have had accomplices, and that didn't fit in to the federal story, especially if the reality showed that it had to be somebody who had access to a federal building for long extended periods of time. General Benton K. Parton is the former head of Air Force Weapons Development and had over 30-plus years running the Air Force Weapons Development Program. He has multiple engineering degrees. General Parton was amazed by press reports claiming the building had been blown in and that a truck bomb could cause that damage, when even basic understanding of explosive signatures shows that the building was blown not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Within days of the blast, General Benton K. Parton was on the scene. But of course he was barred access. But from video as well as photographs of the columns, it was obvious to any trained eye that the columns had been blown off by shape charges. In a detailed report, the former head of Air Force Weapons Development laid out the physics, the mathematics. It was a physical impossibility for a truck bomb, even made of military-grade explosives, couldn't even begin to approach the damage that was brought against the Oklahoma City Federal Building. Now the seismographs come in. You see, the seismographs first registered 1 distinct explosion and then a group of explosions so close to each other that they couldn't be separated. You see, the feds had to have a diversionary blast. They had to be able to tell the world that it was that lone nut McVeigh out front. You see, they needed McVeigh's truck bomb outside so they could cover the fact that there was actually explosives inside the structure. And if you look at the actual crater that was there, it was so small it could hardly be measured. But later in media reports, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Another key piece of evidence that General Parton raises is that a single bomb explosion cannot account for the failure of column B, which was further from the truck bomb than columns B4 and B5, which did not fail. He concludes that the asymmetrical nature of the damage to the Murrah building is one indication of demolition charges were being used in the bombing. In modern history, literally thousands of structures of every type and design have been destroyed commercially to make way for new structures. But that didn't matter to the BATF, the federal government, and the media. They turned structural engineering on its head, demanding, telling the world that a single truck bomb actually did this damage, and with this signature that clearly showed that the building had been blown out, not in. Not only was the scientific and engineering world in shocked disbelief, the general public wasn't buying the story because they'd seen what had happened. Now let's go to an actual news report the day of the tragedy.
Some of the floors have just crashed together. I mean, there are some points where you just literally can't get in at all. And then from Chopper 4, at some particular points, we could see all the way through the building. That's the force of the explosion. It just blew out all the walls and everything inside. Blew out all the walls, blew out all the walls, blew out all the walls.
Outraged by the federal cover-up, leaders from across Oklahoma, led by State Representative Charles Key, banded together to put together the final report, 550 pages detailing this criminal federal operation. Now let's look at the cowardice of the BATF. You see, they got a warning, but they didn't pass it on to the children in the daycare center.
What he told him is that he thought that they had received a tip that morning of the bomb.
Yet another witness, a rescue worker, says after she talked with an agent at the bombing scene, she also suspected the ATF was warned and agents stayed away from their office that morning.
I asked him if his office was in the building, and he said yes, and I asked if there were any ATF agents that were still in the building, and he said no, we weren't here.
Witness number 1 approached an ATF agent nearby. He claims he asked the agent what had happened, and witness number 1 says this is what the agent told him.
He started getting a little bit nervous. He tried reaching somebody on a two-way radio. Couldn't get anybody, and I told him I wanted an answer right then. He said they were in debriefing. None of the agents had been in there. They had been tipped by their pagers not to come into work that day. Plain as day out of his mouth. They were tipped. Why wasn't anybody else? There was a lot of people, good people, died down there. And if they knew, they should have let everybody else know.
Oklahoma City paramedic Tiffany Bible, who heroically responded just minutes after the blast on April 19, 1995, swore in an affidavit that when she arrived, the BATF was in full mop gear, bomb gear that takes at least 30 minutes to put on. When she asked them, "Oh my goodness, were you guys hurt inside the blast?" they said, "No, we got tipped off by our pagers not to come in today."
Agents forewarned about a bomb in Oklahoma City. Did they know the Murrah building was a target? The ATF says no, absolutely not. But tonight in a story you'll see only on the News Channel, you're about to hear otherwise from people who were at the Murrah building that morning.
We're asking simple questions and we can't get any answers, so it makes us that much more curious, you know. Where the hell were they?
The News Channel did ask for a private meeting with ATF officials to discuss the credibility of these witness reports. But the ATF refused, saying they had no more to say on the subject.
Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, and so did Timothy McVeigh in Oklahoma City. So we're meant to believe. But hundreds of eyewitnesses reported seeing Middle Eastern men crawling all over this operation. Let's look at John Doe number 2.
Because I sat there and I seen McVeigh was with another person.
Do you have any doubt in your mind that there was a passenger in the Ryder truck?
That's even more. I have no doubt there was definitely a second person, no matter what. There was 2 people in this vehicle.
John Doe number 2, and there was a $2 million price put on his head, and now they're saying there's no John Doe number 2.
And our witnesses picked out of photo lineups. The News Channel shared the information and surveillance tapes of this man with the FBI. They've had some of that material long before our reports went on the air.
In the building, and I looked out the window, and I seen the Ryder's truck, and I seen the man get out of the Ryder's truck.
She was just 10 feet away from the man depicted in this sketch when he stepped out of the Ryder truck.
He was olive complexion, and he had black curly hair. He was wearing the baseball cap, but his curls were sticking out of his head. It was short in the back, but you could still see the curls in his hair. He was not American. He was foreign. You can tell by his skin, his face, the way his face was.
We asked FBI spokesman Dan Vogel if John Doe number 2 is still part of the investigation. Does he exist? The answer, yes. The FBI is still trying to locate and identify John Doe number 2. The man in our reports is Iraqi. Today, the FBI says they are not pursuing a Middle Eastern connection. This doesn't mean it has been ruled out. That could change tomorrow.
State, local, and federal police around the country actually detained dozens of Middle Eastern men trying to exit the country. Former Iraqi Republican Guard officers like Al Husseini Hussein. Despite all this evidence, the Clinton Justice Department said, release them. We don't want to talk to them. There is no Middle Eastern connection. In the making of this documentary film, our team has interviewed scores of former FBI agents, current FBI agents, police officers, detectives who were on the scene and who worked the case. They detained, they arrested members of the Iraqi Republican Guard while trying to flee the United States. They would open up their bags and find blue jogging suits, bomb-making materials. They would try to hold them, try to charge them. They could have convicted them in front of a jury, according to my sources. But Bill Clinton demanded their release. Later, I interviewed David Shippers, the man that impeached Bill Clinton, that brought down the mob in Chicago. And David Shippers stated that the Oklahoma City bombing team was the same people involved in the World Trade Center attack on September 11th. And guess what? Al Husseini Hussein was actually working in the Boston airport. It's amazing. Now we see the grand plan of the feds. These people are actually working for them. All the evidence shows.
And the details are chilling. We'll also focus on surveillance cameras that caught the bombing on tape, and maybe the men behind the bombing. The News Channel has new information tonight that there's a chance surveillance tapes could be the smoking gun evidence. Now, we asked candid questions in a rare face-to-face meeting with ATF officials close to the investigation. We learned that video collected from downtown businesses the morning of April 19th may someday be played before a jury. Officials won't say who or what exactly is on the tape. However, numerous sources have confirmed the tapes exist and that they reveal more than one bomber.
So what evidence are they asking for? They're asking for video taken from the Ryder truck from the Rigi Towers.
Well, Kevin, it's a question we've all been asking. We've been asking that question since we first broke the story that surveillance cameras aimed at the federal building could have captured all those involved on tape. Now, sources have confirmed those tapes exist and that they show more than one bomber. The FBI also confirmed those tapes exist when they refused to release them, claiming the video is part of a criminal investigation. And now, for the first time, we get an on-the-record response from the head of the Dallas office, ATF. We learned that videotape could be unveiled as part of the prosecution's case. No officials will discuss specifically what's on the video, but we have been able to recreate some of what may have been captured by downtown surveillance cameras through the eyes of the witnesses. Now, you're looking at a computer recreation of the final movements of the Ryder truck according to the people who crossed its path at 5th and Harvey, moments before the explosion. Tonight at 10, the witnesses will detail their memories of how they believe the suspects carried out the crime and made their getaway. Now, all these accounts share a common and unsettling similarity. The witnesses say they saw several accomplices, including the infamous John Doe No. 2. ATF officials tell us the elusive John Doe is still part of this case, but will not comment any further. However, they did tell us that there's a lot about this case we don't know yet, information you can't find in the indictments against Timothy McVeigh, Terry Nichols, and Michael Fortier.
It was just hours after the bombing when the news channel first told you about the possibility that surveillance cameras may have captured the explosion and the killers on tape. Our sources and sources for the LA Times describe what's actually on those tapes. The information shows some huge surprises, the biggest that it may have been John Doe No. 2, not Timothy McVeigh, who detonated the bomb. Brad Edwards has the latest on the investigation in this exclusive News Channel report.
Our new information comes directly from a source that has seen parts of those surveillance tapes. It also comes from reports now in the Los Angeles Times. But perhaps the biggest surprise is contained in the news channel's own information. Timothy McVeigh was not the last person to leave the Ryder truck. In fact, another man sat inside the cab of the truck after McVeigh got out. We believe that man is John Doe No. 2, a man who, for all we know, is still on the loose, leaving open a vital question. Was it John Doe No. 2 who actually set off the bomb, not Timothy McVeigh, as we've all been led to believe? News Channel 4 has for weeks been demanding copies of the surveillance tapes from the FBI. The federal government so far is dragging its feet. But many people in the investigation have seen the tapes, and now so has a source willing to describe to the news channel what the tapes show. The LA Times report shows there was a surveillance camera near the corner of 5th and Harvey and another near the corner of 5th and Robinson. Federal investigators recreated the time sequence leading up to the bombing by matching the video and still photos from the surveillance cameras. Since we can't show you the tape ourselves, we're reenacting what our source says he saw on those tapes. As witnesses told the news channel before, the tapes show the Ryder truck parked in front of the Murrah building where we now know the blast went off. As witnesses also told us, the tape showed two men sitting inside the Ryder truck. A man strongly resembling Timothy McVeigh gets out of the driver's side, steps down. He then appears to have dropped something on the step up into the truck. He bends down and appears to pick something up off the step. Then he turns and walks directly across 5th Street toward the Journal Record building. All this time, John Doe No. 2 is still inside the Ryder truck's cab, sitting on the passenger side. Time passes. The surveillance tape is time-lapse photography. Without knowing exactly the time interval between shots, our source can't be sure how long John Doe No. 2 sat in that cab. What was he doing all that time? Then the tape shows John Doe No. 2 getting out of the passenger side of the Ryder truck. Again, the tape shows that a bombing witness accurately described what happened next to News Channel 4.
I was standing in the building, and I looked out the window, and I seen the Ryder's truck, and I seen the man get out of the Ryder's truck.
The tape shows John Doe No. 2 getting out, shutting the passenger side door. He steps toward the front of the truck and is momentarily out of the frame of the surveillance camera. But shortly, he appears back in frame, walking toward the rear of the truck, still on the sidewalk in front of the Murrah building. Again, he turns east toward the front of the truck, looking toward the street. John Doe No. 2 then walks diagonally across 5th Street toward the east, as if heading toward the YMCA or the intersection of 5th and Robinson. He again leaves the frame of the camera. Another camera shooting from another angle clearly shows the actual explosion that destroyed the federal building and killed 169 people. So what does the mysterious John Doe number 2 look like in the tapes? The man who stayed inside the Ryder truck, possibly triggering the bomb? Well, his features are obscured by a baseball cap in the portion of tape seen by our source. The same kind of cap shown in the composite drawing first released of John Doe number 2. The cap was a sports cap, flame style. The man himself was taller than the man resembling McVeigh and much thicker in build. He appears to have a dark or olive complexion. Our source saw only a few minutes of tape. He didn't see all of the almost 20 minutes of surveillance tapes that reportedly were distributed to FBI agents around the country to help in their investigation. But they do show enough to raise some crucial questions. Who actually set off the bomb? What was John Doe number 2 doing in the cab of the truck after the McVeigh lookalike got out? And how did John Doe number 2 get away from the Murrah building?
My understanding is there was a video of McVeigh getting out of the Ryder truck, jumping into this other pickup with John Doe number 2. Well, where's that video? Are we ever going to get to see it?
Do you realize what you've just seen, America? The government had multiple surveillance camera tapes. In fact, when it finally came out in court, when the federal government declared in 2001 that they wouldn't release the videotapes because of national security implications, that there were actually 12 surveillance camera tapes that had these different Islamic individuals, these Arabic men with McVeigh and others, as well as the BATF hiding out right down the street, preparing to pounce on the operation and declare themselves the heroes, the saviors, the victims. Think about it. Now in 2001 and right into 2002, the federal government claims national security and refuses to release 12-plus surveillance camera tapes. What are they hiding? And the feds never tried to use it in court. I mean, if they had McVeigh pulling up alone and bombing the building and it was just a truck bomb, why not use the actual surveillance camera tapes to do it? But they didn't do that. You have to ask yourselves why. What's on that tape? Well, after you've seen all this evidence, it's clear. Federal involvement. Ratcheting up the police state right here in America. Danny Coulson, the FBI's top counterterrorism agent, checked into an Oklahoma City hotel nearly 9 hours before a truck bomb nearly leveled the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. The Embassy Suites Hotel receipt of Danny Coulson, the director of the FBI's Terrorist Task Force and founding commander of the Bureau's hostage rescue team, was dated April 19, 1995, with a check-in time of 0:20. That's military time for 12:20 a.m. Almost 9 hours before the blast, Chief Agent Coulson lied to the American people. He told a Time magazine reporter in 1999 the harrowing tale of how he sped at over 100 miles an hour from his home in Dallas, trying to get there after the bombing to save people and conduct an investigation. Oh, and by the way, the FBI won't release any of the credit card statements and records for any of their agents. What are they trying to hide?
The system wasn't working. Going through the system didn't work. I did everything that they advised me to do. It didn't do any good.
Hoppy Heidelberg was an upstanding member of the community with no criminal record. He'd been a grand juror for years. But when he started asking questions about the Middle Eastern connection and FBI prior knowledge and BATF involvement, the FBI actually came to his house brandishing firearms and told him to shut his mouth if he knew what was good for him. When he refused to be part of the cover-up and demanded that he be able to call witnesses as his right as a grand juror, the judge kicked him off the case. Just one more piece of this massive cover-up.
The News Channel has learned of another strange development. Apparently, before the bombing, Governor Frank Keating's brother, Mark, had been working on a novel about a terrorist bombing in Oklahoma City. Stranger still, one of the characters in the novel was named Thomas McVeigh.
Governor Frank Keating's brother, Martin Keating, wrote The Final Jihad. In the book, Tom McVeigh masterminds the bombing of the Oklahoma City building. He dedicated the book to the Knights of the Secret Circle, a known Illuminati group. And he wrote the book 2 years before the bombing. The tragic events of Oklahoma City, if the truth was known to the public, makes it even more tragic, even more horrific. You see, it's now a monument to the police state, a monument to the sacrifice the government made of American lives, of American blood, of American tears, as an excuse to get the feds to be able to circle the wagons against the American people, to have a pretext, an excuse to expand their police state. They covered the whole operation up. It's clear that they had prior knowledge that multiple bombs were detonated on the inside of the building, that the feds have grabbed the 12 surveillance camera tapes and are refusing to release them, even in 2002. Threatening grand jurors, destroying the building and burying it under guard. The federal government blamed this tragic event on Christians, conservatives, gun owners. But if you look at the evidence, it's clear who's behind it, the federal government. And they use this, just like Hitler used the Reichstag, to get martial law cranking in America.
$62 million is coming to Oklahoma soon to help anti-terrorism and disaster relief efforts.
Government crime certainly does pay, especially when it's government-sponsored terrorism against its own institutions. That's right, the BATF locally got tens of millions of dollars extra funding, but so did every other federal agency that tries to control the American people. $24 billion increase in anti-terrorism funds. And after September 11th, they've now tripled that. And of course, the BATF ensured that the building was completely demolished, so there couldn't be any evidence of their heinous acts. And that's right, ladies and gentlemen, they actually buried the building under guard at a private landfill with Wackenhut guards protecting it. From A to Z, federal fingerprints all over it and doing everything they can to suppress the truth.